We have some breaking news that the Toronto Maple Leafs have just pulled off an absolute heist. And no, it is not the Mitch Marner trade. It is a different player that nobody saw coming. We're going to break down this trade and discuss how not only is it a heist for the Leafs, but this has huge implications going forward. And Darius Living did it again via trade, folks. But before we get into it all, quick reminder, hit that subscribe button. If you're a part of the 70% who aren't subscribed to the channel and you're excited for all the moves the Leafs are making, the crazy trades that are going down, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Darius, a lot to go over today. The Leafs just pulled off an absolute heist. And we talked about robberies. This is the third robbery in a row at this point. You talk about the Nyes contract, the Tavares contract, and now we're all waiting eagerly for Mitch Marner to be traded. And it is not Mitch Marner, but it is another player with the initials MM. And let's dive into it right here. Matias Maccelli from Utah. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Toronto Maple Leafs have acquired literally 1 minute ago, as you guys always know, keeping you up to date with the latest. But we do have the return. And Darius, not only are the Leafs adding a young forward, Marner replacement in all likelihood, they're buying low. And boy, oh boy, did they get an absolute stud. And all they had to give up was a conditional third round pick. That was what they gave up, which is absolutely absurd. I'm losing my mind here. This literally came out a minute ago, so this is kind of our initial reactions. Darius, what are your thoughts?
This is a great trade. And, we were all expecting a trade, like you said, today from, somebody with the initials MM and involving the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I wasn't expecting Maccelli to be the guy coming back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. But, we've been talking all weekend of the Toronto Maple Leafs potentially taking advantage of teams. Well, I think they took advantage of the Utah Mammoth. Now, at this point, I was going to say hockey club still, but the Utah Mammoth here as well. I think you're, buying low on this player right now. And you're getting a really, really good player that, like you said, is probably going to be the Mitch Marner replacement to a degree. Obviously not 1-to-1, and this is not a 100-point player, but this is a guy just a couple years ago when they were still in Arizona that put up really good numbers and looked promising. And, when you're looking at the stats, he didn't have a great year last year. Really didn't, right? For the amount of games. He also didn't play in all the games either. He only played in about 55 games, I believe. So that is something to keep in mind. Didn't have the greatest season, but you have to keep in mind, he actually did request a trade during the season. So clearly something happened there. Didn't like his fit with the team, didn't feel comfortable. Whatever it is, I don't want to speculate too much. Whatever it was, he didn't want to be there and he requested a trade and they granted him his trade. And obviously didn't have a great season, so they had to sell low on him. Toronto Maple Leafs took advantage of that, and this is a guy who's going to play on the wing. We heard, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago as well, that the Leafs wanted to upgrade via trade. That's exactly what they're doing here. I think this is an upgrade. Obviously, they don't have any wingers at this point, very few wingers. So this is a great move. I think that he is going to be a really good player for the Toronto Maple Leafs, put up a bunch of points. Not the biggest player either. Keep that in mind, right? Brings a lot of speed, a lot of skill, which I think is a good thing because the Leafs are getting bigger in other areas too. And we know that they're adding pretty much up front at this point. The defense is solidified. There still could be some, interesting moves in terms of moving a defenseman maybe, but you know what you have in your goaltending as well. They wanted to make some moves up front. They did that here, and I feel like there's a lot of high upside with this player. He's only 24 as well. Keep that in mind. They get younger, they get some speed, some skill, and a guy that I think can put the puck in the back of the net and make some plays.
Yeah, you look at his stats from last year here, 18 points in 55 games. The advanced analytics weren't great, but everyone is calling this, objective fans, just a great deal for the Leafs because you look at his season before, 57 points. And this was when he was comfortable. Of course, he requested a trade. You mentioned a bunch of things going on, but even then, like at his lowest, which is where the Leafs are buying him at, like this is a first round pick player right here from the year
Right.
before. You get him now for a third. That a report came out literally, I'm reading it here 10 seconds ago from Chris Johnson. I believe if Maccelli records 51 points next season, it goes to a second round pick. So that's for the details and the stipulations on the condition for the third. So it goes to a second round pick if he gets 50 or 51 points, which I'm fine with. Essentially just saying, hey, it's a third round pick if he remains maybe a 30 to 40 point player. If he goes back to the way he was, it's here. The Leafs are pulling off moves for an extremely good, who's probably going to play in the top 6 next season, forward for the Leafs without, and this is why they gave up the first round pick at the deadline. And they got, of course, cost control now. Scott Lawton, Brandon Carlo, they now have completely overhauled things. And again, just an unbelievable deal. He is a RFA after next season. His cap hit is $3.4 million. We would assume, like you mentioned, this is a cap dump, so no retained salary. We believe at least on the Utah side. But man, oh man, it is a very, very good day to be a Leafs fan. And quite frankly, I think this is just the beginning of what's going to be one of the craziest days in the Core 4 era here. But Maccelli here. Wow, 24-year-old who is coming off of a bad year. It's almost the best time to acquire someone like this because the Leafs don't have a ton of draft capital available for trade, and clearly that's what the Utah Mammoth were looking for.
Exactly, and it's a conditional third right now. This is a steal, right? As we see it right here. Again, he could have a bad year again, but I don't think that's very likely. Clearly, something went wrong. He wanted a trade out of Utah, and we've seen in the past he can put together some really good seasons, like when he was with it's the same organization, of course, but the Arizona Coyotes, right? So he did have a great season there. Again, you have to keep in mind he makes just north of $3.4 million right now, so it does seem like a cap dump for the Utah Mammoth. But for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they can take on that cap. You still have a ton of cap space. We talked about, everything that's happened so far. They got their guys locked up. John Tavares and Matthew Knies last year were making a combined $11.9 million. This year, they're going to be making a combined 12.1, so just a $200,000 difference. And you have them locked up long term, at least for the next 4 years with John Tavares, right? Now you get a really good winger, a skilled winger here, who I think is going to have a much better year next year. Of course, playing with some of the firepower that the Leafs have can make a difference. You get it for a very low cost in terms of the assets going out the door, in terms of how much he makes in terms of salary. And he's an RFA at the end of all this. He's a young player. You can re-sign him to, I'm sure, a reasonable contract, and it's team controlled. So if you do have to trade him or whatever, you have his rights, right? Which is very good. Tidy work once again from Brad Treliving. So I'm in love with this trade. I think this is great. I think that there's tremendous upside here. I think he's going to have a much better season. You're getting some more speed, some more skill. You're getting younger, which is something that, a lot of people have been talking about. We've been talking about it too as the season ended. The Leafs are a much older team now, right? They're a really old team. So, you get some youth there as well. This is just a no-brainer, especially at that cost. And even if it is a second rounder that you give up, if he's scoring more than 50 points, I think that's worth it.
Yeah, and obviously a big part of this, and we'll have more videos discussing it, of course, probably. You mentioned, we already talked about it, but he's only 24, so he can be a part of this team going forward alongside Matthews, Nylander, Knies, who's recently extended 2 years younger than Maccelli. And of course, now the biggest thing here, his cap hit, assuming no retention, is 3.4. Pretty good. They still have around $10 million left to make more moves here. Of course, this is assuming Mitch Marner walks. I'm assuming they're going to make a trade here later today. My guess is in the next 4 or 5 hours or so for Nicholas Waugh. I would assume that's the main guy they're getting back, which we'll have a video if that happens. But of course, you're starting to develop a bit of a team here now, and you could add a couple other guys, Mangiapane. There's some other targets that are available. Things have taken a very positive turn for this team. And again, the belief is still that Marner is going to get traded. Get as many assets as you can. This team is slowly starting to pull it together. And 18 points last year, 8 goals, 10 assists. Not the best season, but I think he's going to have a very good year next year, especially given the fact that A, he's shown it in the past, and B, he's going to be playing at a place, hopefully, that he wants to. And the best part about it is if he has a great year next year, yes, it's a second-round pick. The Leafs can then extend him because he is an RFA. But let us know down below what your thoughts are on this. Make sure to hit that subscribe button because more news is coming very, very soon.